Welcome back to the Messy Friendship Lessons podcast. Woo! Hi guys. It's actually been a while since I've sat down and talked to you like this. The last episode, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, was actually recorded early March, the first week of March, and it came out in May. So it has actually been a hot minute for me. Maybe not for you, but definitely for me. Today's episode is a personal one. It's a sensitive topic, and it is something that is discussed a lot. The title of today's episode is Why I Don't Tell My Friends Everything. I know. Now, I know there's a lot of people who will fully agree with that statement off the bat, and there's another side of people who is like, what? You don't tell your friends everything? What is up with you weirdos that don't trust your friends? And I assure you, this is not an issue of trust. I do trust my friends. And I think it's very important to be friends with people you can trust. After all, I have a podcast all about being a better friend. So, the first key point I will make on this topic is that this is not an issue of trust, but an issue of noise. Let that sink in. This is not an issue of trust, but an issue of noise. And some people will hear that and instantly get what I mean. Because personally, I disagree with the people who don't tell their friends everything because they don't trust them. Girl, you need a new circle of friends if you don't trust any of your friends. But why I don't tell my friends everything is rooted in noise. And you might be like, what do you mean by noise? There is this book. The book is called Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment. And it's by these three authors, Daniel, Oliver, and Cass, I think. But the book focuses on the concept of noise in human decision making. Now, this episode isn't about the book. Put the book aside. It's a great book, though, if you are interested in how noise affects various fields like medicine, law, economic forecasting, and hiring decisions, and how that leads to unfairness and inefficiency, then definitely give it a read. What was the launching pad for this episode was that concept of noise that the book introduces. And there's a quote in the book that stuck out to me and is gonna be the basis of a lot of our discussion today. And it reads, wherever there is judgment, there is noise, and more of it than you think. I'll read that again. Wherever there is judgment, there is noise, and more of it than you think. So, without further ado, I am going to get into the reasons why I don't tell my friends everything. And I'm going to give you guys 4 reasons, or 4 types of noise, if you will. The first is noise that clouds your judgment. The second is noise that kills. Then I will go on to touch on unnecessary noise before finishing with noise about you. So those are our 4 types of noise, our 4 reasons for why I don't tell my friends everything. And if you can leave this episode with one thing, it would be that quote that I read, which is, wherever there is judgment, there is noise and more of it than you think. Reason number one, I don't tell my friends everything because of noise that clouds your judgment. So, I want you to imagine a jar full of bees. What do you picture? Because I just picture that jar vibrating and moving around and it just being so noisy and loud. So, let's use that as an analogy. Let's use our jar full of bees. Let's say your mind is this clean, nice jar, and you put one bee in it. And it's fine. That bee is buzzing around. It's not really, you can't really hear it buzzing. Maybe it's a bit faint, and the jar is still sat on the table, nice and pretty. But then you add a couple more bees into the jar, and more bees, and more bees, and some more bees. And suddenly you can hear the loud buzzing sound. Your jar is vibrating all over the table, so much so that the jar rolls off the table and crashes and smashes onto the ground, and the bees fly everywhere and there's chaos. And that is a very aggressive image, but that is what I imagine when I talk about noise that clouds your judgment. So every time I have just a thought about something, I'm feeling some type of way, my first port of call is not to tell my friends or to pick up the phone and call a friend and let them know all the ways I'm feeling. Especially if that thought I potentially lead to me making some kind of decision. My first port of call is always to pause and wait. And why do I do that? Because I want to think things through on my own before I invite other people to speak on it. Before I invite in judgment that is gonna lead to noise. So I'm gonna give you an example, okay? Let's say you're struggling at work. So you have a really tough week and you just think, ugh, I hated work today. I hated it. I did not enjoy this week. It was stressful. You can think of all the things that could make a work week stressful, but let's just say you hated your week at work. So, and on Friday night, you go out for dinner with one of your friends and you immediately tell her this thought. It's a new thought, it's a new way you're feeling, and you just want to get it out there. And you're like, I hated this week at work. And your friend turns to you and she's like, wow, like that sounds so tough and that sounds, like a lot. Maybe you really need to speak to your manager about this. Maybe you need to sort this out. And she gives you some great advice. And you're like, okay, cool. And you leave the dinner. You don't really think much about it after. It's just, but it's in your head, okay, I could speak to my manager about this. But you haven't really got to that point yet where you think, to escalate it or anything. You just hated your work week. And then that weekend you hang out with a big group of your friends and you decide to tell them again that thought you've been having where I'm just hating work at the minute. And in that group of friends, someone's like, if you hate your job, you need to quit. Like, that's how I would do it. I would quit. Life is too short to be miserable, bro. You need to quit. And your other friend, he's like, no, I've been through that situation. Who doesn't hate work? Everybody hates work. I hate my job right now. Lol. And then you speak to someone else in the group, and that person is like, no, you've got to stick it out. I had a similar situation and I stuck it out and it changed and it was fine. This is only for a season. You'll be fine. So you've had your little chats, you chat about other things when you're hanging out with these people, and you go on with your life. Again, you don't give too much thought to it. They've all given you different advice, and you're like, okay, there's a couple things I could do. But you're still at the point where you're just thinking, I hate work at the minute. And you go back to work on Monday, and Monday is horrible. So Monday night, immediately work is over, you pick up your phone and you call another one of your friends and you're just like, I hate this. And she's like, you need to talk to HR. You need to talk to HR. This is how you deal with it. This is what you need to do. You need to talk to HR. And you're like, oh, well, okay. So now you've had, I don't even know how many people speak on that thought of you hating work. There's so many people, they've all given their different opinions on what that could mean and what you should do and da 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 da. And so you get to the end of Friday and you've had a second week that was horrible. So you sit back and you're like, gosh, okay, what should I do now? Because this has been 2 weeks and I genuinely feel like I'm about to have a breakdown. I cannot take it. It has been the worst. And you sit with yourself and you just don't know what to do. Your mind, you're like, should I quit my job? Or should I speak to my manager? Or should I speak to HR? But no, I shouldn't speak to HR. And is this just what everyone experiences? Didn't my other friends say that everyone hates their job? And one of my friends said I should stick it out. What if this is just a season and this is just a phase and I should stick it out? But my other friend said life is too short and so I should quit my job. And you're like, I don't know what to do. It's information overload. It's choice fatigue. You become so overwhelmed. And that happens when you invite too many thoughts and opinions in and it starts to pollute your judgment. So now you can't even think straight on what judgment to make, or worse, you make a judgment not based on your own experience and your own thoughts, but based off someone else's experience and thoughts. I think I said it on the last episode, and it's something my mom told me. And this isn't a direct quote, but it's something like everyone gives advice selfishly. And it's not intentional, it's not malicious, but we all give advice based on our own lived experiences, our own opinions, our outlooks on life, our own philosophies. Of course, that is what advice is. It's all going to be weaved into that. But my mom told me that in a way to tell me to be cautious who I go to for advice. Because everyone gives advice selfishly. So when you're listening to advice from people, keep that in mind. Assess the situation for yourself before you then open it up to other people to give their opinions. Because you will have to make a decision on what you want to do with that job. And do you want that decision to be clouded by too much noise? Or do you want to make a sound decision? Of course, there's no way in life to know 100% the decision you make is going to be sound. But like I said, you do not want to end up making a decision off someone else's experiences and opinions, right? For example, your friend who was telling you to stick it out, maybe they had a situation where their job was horrible and they stuck it out and things did change and it really was for a season. Whereas your friend that was telling you to quit, maybe they had a situation where they had a horrible job, they quit and they found something else that was just so much better for them and put them on a better path for life, right? Your friends don't hate you. There aren't, I mean, ideally, you don't have friends who are trying to sabotage you. Ideally. So your friends will give you opinions and advice and pass their judgment based on their outlook in life. Before you hear their judgment, make sure you know yours. Because then it is unlikely for it to pollute your decision making. If you wait and think first, which is what I usually do, I often find that I either reach a conclusion by myself or when I go to a friend or some friends, I'm able to sift through, maybe that's something I should take on board, or maybe that's something I should dismiss. And I'm able to come to a clear decision. I've formed an opinion before I've invited other opinions and thoughts in my head. And another thing I would say on noise that clouds your judgment, think about the bees in the jar again. When it's one or two or three bees, it's not that noisy. When you've got a bunch of bees in that jar, it gets noisy and chaotic. Which is why I would advise not telling all your friends about the thought. If you want to go to one or two friends for advice, being careful in who I select for that and not going to every single person about it. Because one or two different perspective is one or two different perspectives can be helpful, but having too much is just information overload, it's choice fatigue, and it creates so much noise. I do not tell my friends every decision that I am on the verge of making, not because I don't trust my friends, not because I think my friends have bad judgment. I mean, in the work example, as you could tell, those were all pretty decent advice depending on the scenario you're in, right? It is all situational dependent on how you should handle not being happy at work. So your friends are not the enemy by any means, and it's not an issue. I really want to stress that. It's really not an issue of trust. It's just an issue of noise. And on to the point of being careful who you tell things to, we're gonna get into what I think is the most dangerous type of noise or thing that noise can result in. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons why I don't tell my friends everything. And so, reason number 2, I don't tell my friends everything because of noise that kills. And I'm not being dramatic. I use kills for a reason. At the beginning of something, you need to protect that seed. At the beginning is not when you go divulging everything. So that applied to the thought we talked about previously. But here, I really want to focus on the beginning of an idea, the beginning of a relationship, the beginning of a new venture, the beginning of anything, the beginning of a huge change in life or a situation you are dealing with. Beware of noise that kills. Let's take the idea, for example. At the beginning, your idea is a little seed, and you need to protect that seed and allow it to grow. When I was speaking to my dad about this episode, he mentioned an analogy that is well known and I think fits perfectly into noise that kills. Okay, so seeds and gardening, let's go. What happens when you plant a seed? We've all done planting of seeds in science when we were like in year 2, okay? So what is the natural order? You have your seed, you plant it, and you cover it with soil. Your seed is what? Hidden. Okay, people can't see that there's a seed in the ground. It's covered with soil and it grows. But where does it grow first? Down. It grows its roots before it starts to emerge from the soil and grow upwards where it can be discovered by everyone. But the first people who are going to discover that it's even growing upwards is the people around it. So those would be your friends. But before something grows upwards and it begins to show, it needs to be planted and covered so that it grows its roots and so that it can grow into a beautiful tree for not just your friends to see, but everyone to see. So when I have an idea, I don't tell my friends. Yeah, I know. You're like, what? When I first have an idea, before it has grown and become what it is, before it has grown its roots, I do not tell my friends. I don't. And I know everyone is so pro telling your friends everything because you just feel like you trust them. These are your people. Be very careful of noise that kills because you can kill off that seed before it has a chance to grow roots. And I'm going to give you a great example. It's an example from Sarah Blakely. I think that's how you say her name. Even if you don't recognize her name, you'll recognize her product. She created Spanx. And if you don't know what Spanx is, then where you been, girl? Especially if you're a woman. I feel like all women know what Spanx is. But if you don't, Spanx is shapewear. And it's so well known that most people think all shapewear is Spanx. And most people refer to all shapewear as Spanx. But I think Skims is changing that. But yes. So Spanx is huge. Multi-billion-dollar company today. And Sarah Blakely said something that I loved when talking about Spanx and her journey. She said ideas are most vulnerable in their infancy. Wow. And that is the seed, right? It can be killed off in the seed. And how she explained that was she was saying, be careful who you tell your idea to just to find out if they like it. Because that is how great ideas get squashed. Again, I really don't want you to take away that your friends are your ops and they're out to kill and squash your ideas. No. Most of the times when people give their opinions and thoughts, it is simply that, their opinion and thought. But sometimes it can squash your idea or discourage you from something that could actually end up being pretty great. So what she did was she waited a year before she told anybody about Spanx. So she didn't have the thought and then immediately rush and tell her friends, oh my gosh, I have this great business idea. No, she waited a whole entire year where she built up the idea by herself before she even made it a company, just working on the idea at home by herself, building it up before she even told her friends and family. And do you know what the crazy thing is? When she told her friends and family, they discouraged her. They questioned the idea. They were like, are you sure that's going to work? Are you sure that's going to be huge? And that is fine. Again, these are people who love and care about her. It is not malicious. And I definitely don't think my friends are malicious. But she says, imagine if she heard all of that before she had spent that year working on her idea. Imagine if immediately she had the idea, she told people, and everybody's like, oh, I don't think that's going to work, and this and that. She said that Spanx would not exist today if she had heard that when she first had the idea before she had invested in it. And Spanx today is a multi-billion-dollar business. When she had told her friends and family after a year, she heard what they had to say, she considered it, but she kept going with her idea. Don't tell your friends everything, because noise can kill. Sometimes their judgments and all the opinions can kill your idea before it even starts. And that's not only for ideas, that's for your gifts, your plans, your relationships. I think it's sweet and lovely to just keep it to yourself in the beginning so that all the people's opinions do not kill it. The thing throughout this conversation of why I don't tell my friends everything, it is largely about discernment. I think you need to use discernment to discern who you should tell things to and who you shouldn't. And you need discernment to decide what you should tell people and what you shouldn't. And to link back to Spanx and Sarah's idea, she had the wisdom and the discernment to know, look, my idea is in its infancy. I'm not going to talk to anyone about it till I've grown the roots of this, till I've fully invested in it. Be wary of noise that kills. It can kill an idea. It can kill a relationship. Anything that is in its infancy, I tend to keep it to myself before I share it with my friends because of noise that kills. Okay, on to our third reason. I don't tell my friends everything because of unnecessary noise. Okay, I know we all love our friends, and sometimes people just feel like, I have a thought, my friends need to know. Something's going on in my life, all my friends need to know. Not just my best friend, every friend. And everyone I meet up needs to know I'm going through this. Everyone needs to know that I'm thinking of this. Everyone needs to know about this career path. Everyone needs to know everything. Everything. I have to tell my friends everything. My friends are my human diaries. But I disagree with that because I think some things just don't need to be said. I don't share things with people just to say it. I usually assess this by, if I'm deciding to share something, I will think, am I looking for comfort? Am I looking for advice? Am I looking to be understood? Or am I looking to relate to someone? Am I looking for someone to get to know me better? Because sometimes we will share things from the past or share things we're going through to relate, to bond, to connect with people. But if there is nothing that you are looking for there, there is no need. None of those things are ticked off. You're just like, oh, this is happening in my life, so I'm going to share it with all your friends. I just don't do that because I think it creates a lot of unnecessary noise. You're inviting judgment that is not needed. And if we go back to the quote from the book that is talking about the flaw in human judgment and the issue with how noise can affect your decision making, the quote says, wherever there is judgment, there is noise, and more of it than you think. So, when you're sharing things that there's no real reason you're sharing it, you're offering it up on a plate and you're asking your friends to speak over it and pass their judgment. And your friends will pass their judgment. Again, they're not malicious, they're not out to get you. That is just the nature of things. They will give you their opinions. And sometimes when you're not looking for advice or anything, it just becomes unnecessary noise that could potentially end up clouding your judgment, that could potentially end up killing it, or just make you feel icky. There's no need to let people speak over things that are unnecessary to speak over. I strongly believe, and the Bible talks about it, I think it's a universal rule of life that words are very powerful. And I know not everyone agrees with that, but I've seen that play out. And there are even studies that talk about even what we tell ourselves in our minds being so powerful. Words are so powerful. So when it comes to your life, you have to be very careful who you invite to speak over that. You don't want too much noise. Your friends love you and they care about you, but too many opinions from every single friend you have can end up just creating so much unnecessary noise, especially if you don't even need advice, comfort to be understood or to relate. Why are you inviting that to speak over your situation and in a way that could potentially have an impact on it and your decision making? So, yeah, I don't tell my friends everything because I don't need unnecessary noise. There's no need for it. I assess how I discern. I think a lot of my discernment does come from God and the Holy Spirit guides me, but He guides me and gives me wisdom. And sometimes you can gain discernment from your experiences. On to my final reason. I don't tell my friends everything because of noise about you. Now, you gotta be careful, guys, because people talk. And it's not always in a malicious and vindictive way, but people talk. Word gets around, people talk. And if you tell your friends everything, you might just end up creating a lot of noise about you, a lot of chitty chatter, a lot of gossip about you. Okay? Because this is commonly known and a lot of people say it, and I've said it before, but not everybody is asking because they care. Some of your friends are asking because it's juicy, because it's tea, because they want to talk about it. They're not too concerned with how you are and more interested in, oh my gosh, what is going on? Right? And that can sound very cruel and very callous, but it's not always malicious. I think you just have to make sure you are aware of it. And if you don't want noise about you, then don't always divulge what is going on to all your friends. Be selective with who you tell. I'm going to give a personal example. It's just it's a good caution about noise about you, and just being having discernment in who you tell. And I'll talk about discernment. Um, I'll cover discernment after I finish with this story, because I think it's the best way to decide which one of your friends you tell things to, or if you should even tell your friend something in the first place. Um, and it's your biggest defense against noise. But I had a situation where I had a falling out with a friend, unfortunately, and it was a disagreement about something that is a sensitive topic, is all I would say. So I'm gonna keep it very high level here, okay? But it had something to do with my lived experience, and my friend's position and standpoint on it was hurtful. And at the time, I was very hurt, and it led to me pulling away from this person. Now, me and this friend have a lot of mutual friends. So, like, I think a year later or 2 years later, I was speaking to a mutual friend, and we were talking about this sensitive topic. And in a moment of vulnerability, I divulged to this mutual friend what the friend that I had distanced myself from had said. And this mutual friend was shocked, because it's a sensitive topic. But I didn't really want it all out there. I was just sharing to be vulnerable and to feel heard, because we were talking about this topic. I didn't want it to be something, I didn't plan for it to be widely shared. But people talk. So let's say months go by, and I'm out with another group of my friends who, again, we're all mutuals. And we were all sat down, and we ended up talking about this sensitive topic again. And one of my friends brings up, "Oh, and by the way, I heard what X said. That is so wild." And I froze, and I was like, I did not want this to be discussed widely. I did not want this to be discussed by all the mutuals and everyone who knows, because I did not want to shame this person for their viewpoint. I did not want it publicized. I didn't want it to become a thing, especially because it's around a sensitive topic. And after that point, that person had apologized. And I think I was somewhat over the hurt a little bit better by the point where this was brought up. And so I just felt kind of sick. I was like, oh gosh, oh no, like everyone's talking about this, and it's putting this other person in a negative light. It's like putting me into the mix of the conversation, and it was creating a lot of noise about me and noise about this other person, because what was happening, because it was a sensitive topic, everyone was passing their judgments, and it ended up being discussed in this group. And look, the issue wasn't that I wouldn't have told anyone in that group. I didn't mind the people knowing who knew, because they were all my friends, and I trusted them. I trusted it wouldn't go out further than this. I trusted that there was no malicious intent in the discussion, but still, I did not want that to be discussed point blank, period. Right? And by sharing too much with my friend, I ended up creating noise about me. Okay? And you might say, well, that was your friend's fault. She shouldn't have said da 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 da. But I think I think something that would be important to learn in life on that tip of discernment is that people talk. You need to understand that people talk. And so when you share things, make sure that you're not sharing anything that you would hate to if it came back to you. You would hate if you heard this again. Because if you would hate if it came up again, and you'd hate if you heard it again, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. And I did not do that. I did not use my discernment in that situation, but I learned. I learned. So I think you need to discern what you tell. So let's say you're going through something and everyone's asking you about it. Like I said, not everyone is asking because they care. And people just want to know, people just want to talk. And it starts spreading around, and everyone's talking about it, and all your friends are talking about you and how you're handling the situation, and this, that, and the third. And you're just very uncomfortable with all the judgments and discussions that are happening about you. That is noise about you. That is what that feels like. It's not necessarily malicious, gossiping, backstabbing conversations, but it's loads of people passing an opinion and a judgment on your life. And even though those people are your friends, that can be really overwhelming and it can actually be a bit too much, especially if it's something that you just do not want widely discussed. So, yes, I think your biggest defense against noise is discernment. And I've spoken about how I get my discernment from the Holy Spirit, who gives me wisdom to discern things and discern what I should share, what I shouldn't share, who I should speak to, who I shouldn't speak to. We gain discernment and wisdom through our experiences as well. And that's where you gain discernment of, hey, if my friend has a habit of telling me everyone's business, not in a malicious way, but she shares everyone's business, she's got a bit of a blabbermouth, maybe I'm not going to tell that friend my business because I do not want everyone to know it. Or discernment that knowing that, hey, people talk. Or discernment that knowing, hey, this idea is in its infancy, I'm not going to share it. Those are all, or discernment of knowing that noise exists. Wherever there's judgment, that there is noise. And if you have too many opinions and too many thoughts on something, it can become really noisy. That is discernment. Discernment is wisdom and being able to judge a situation. So, I don't tell my friends everything, not because I do not trust them, but because of noise. And that is my explanation. That is my confession. If you're my friend and you're listening to this, I would hate for your takeaway to be Thomasin doesn't trust me, she doesn't like me, she thinks I have bad judgment. That is not at all what I am saying. And if you're truly my friend, you'd know that's not the case because I've probably told you things. But I definitely do not tell you everything. And it's because I'm careful of not creating noise. I want to protect things in their infancy. I want to think about it first before I come to you. Sometimes I just don't need to tell you because there's no help or comfort or anything that I need. It's just what's going on and it's going to be okay. Or maybe I'm getting that help and comfort for one of my other friends, so I don't need to tell all my friends because that need is already being addressed. Or I've already gotten advice from one of my friends, and so to avoid too much noise, I won't go to every single one of my friends for advice. That is all it is. I do not tell my friends everything because of noise. And my biggest defense against noise is discernment. Let me know what you think. After hearing why I don't tell my friends everything, what do you think? Are you still like, I don't know, girl, I still believe in telling my friends everything? Or are you like, I don't know, girl, I don't tell my friends everything. Yeah, noise sounds fair and good, but because of trust, you cannot trust people. Which fence are you on? Or do you fully agree with me and you're like, yep, I stand by those viewpoints, I stand by that opinion? Let me know what you think about noise, guys. And if you are interested about noise and how it clouds human judgment, I would really encourage you to read that book. If there was one thing I would want you to remember from this whole episode, it is that wherever there is judgment, there is noise, and more of it than you think. It's a bit of a sensitive topic because I know a huge part of bonding with people is sharing things. And so I'm not at all trying to promote secrecy. I just want to promote discernment and maybe not telling everybody everything. That's all. Not that you shouldn't share anything with your friends. I really don't believe that. And I really hope you know that. If this is the first episode you're listening to, I really need to stress that. Go listen to other episodes because you'll know how much I think it's important to rely on friends and how great the gift of friendship is. My friends have helped me through so much. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't tell them, right? So, yes, this isn't to put any fear in anyone or say not to trust anyone. I really need to stress that it's not an issue of trust, it's an issue of noise. I feel like this message is for my oversharers in the house. I love you guys. Oversharers, you gotta be careful, okay? You gotta be careful because the more you overshare, the louder the noise. Please leave a rating or let me know what you think about this podcast episode. I love to read messages or engage in conversations about things I've spoken about on the episodes because it's nice to hear another person's perspective or argument. So if you want to discuss it, DM me. You can follow the podcast on all social media platforms at the Messy Friendship Lessons podcast. Please leave a rating wherever you're listening if you enjoyed this episode or you love the podcast. Okay, guys, this has been the Messy Friendship Lessons podcast. I love you all. Bye.